Hello, all you cowboys and cowgirls, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Cowboy Up Running Channel. This is Ultra Cowboy, going to be your host, your mentor, your training partner as you embark on some of the hardest, toughest endeavors of your life. The purpose of this channel is to provide you with the training, the knowledge, and the motivation to overcome some of the toughest obstacles that you're going to face, and to give you the courage and confidence to try and tackle something that seems beyond your reach. For those of you who don't know, the term cowboy up is a Western or cowboy phrase, or especially used in the rodeo scene. And it means one of two things. Either one, you just got a good old-fashioned butt whooping, and it's time to suck it up, dust off your chaps and your wranglers, put your cowboy hat back on, and hop on the back of that wild bronc or bull and cowboy up. It can also mean that you're about to embark on something with a good likelihood of getting a good old-fashioned butt whooping. You might be sitting on the back of a mountain of a raging animal full of snot, ferocity, and several thousand pounds of muscle that wants nothing more to throw you off and try and destroy you. And before they open up that chute and let you out with nothing but a little rope to hold you on, you better cowboy up. So I grew up in rural Idaho, and I drove tractors, I wore the Wranglers, I've worn cowboy boots, the lace-up boots, listened to country music, branded cows, eaten Rocky Mountain oysters, done mutton busting, ridden horses, just about everything that you can think of that most cowboys that you would think of would do. I haven't ever ridden a bull. I've ridden a mechanical one, but I don't really have any aspirations to do that. But as I've gone on in life, I currently live in Colorado, out in Colorado Springs, and have kind of moved away from the fields and the cowboy Western way of life, and currently work in medicine. But I haven't forgotten the lessons that I've learned. And hanging around with some of the cowboys and cowgirls out west, I mean, you really appreciate the hard work, the effort that it takes to grow and cultivate the land, to tame animals, and just live that way of life. And when I was growing up, one of my greatest mentors that I ever had was my grandfather, Gary Earl Fowles, and he was just an amazing man. But one of the things that he really taught me was to never give up. Before I was born, when my mom was in high school, he was diagnosed with a condition called multiple sclerosis. And it's basically a process where the nerves, the insulating layer of the nerves, stop working, or sort of come apart, don't grow anymore. And so your nerves stop working. When your nerves stop working, you can't get your brain to send signals to your muscles to fire. So as I grew up, he became weaker and weaker. When I was young, he had pigs, chickens, horses. He taught me how to ride a four-wheeler, how to shoot a BB gun, how to shoot a shotgun. I helped birth baby piglets, helped him gather the eggs in the morning. And I mean, he lived out in the country in Idaho and, provided for his family. And as I grew older and got into high school and then into college, it got to the point where they had to sell off their animals, sell off their land, and he couldn't get around without a cane and eventually a scooter. He couldn't even walk anymore. And he was one of the most active men that I knew growing up. He did fishing, hunting. Like, he was a man that was born to live in the earth and to work it and till it and just, work until he died. And eventually his body rebelled to the point where he couldn't even take care of himself anymore. But I never once heard him complain or whine about the hand that life had dealt him. He always had a smile on his face. He was always willing to try and get somebody else to laugh, to bring joy into the lives of others until the day that he died. And he never gave up the struggle to his last breath. And I will never forget the example that he set for me. And I recently came into ownership of this hat. This cowboy hat actually belonged to my great-grandfather, Earl Fowles, who gave it to my grandfather, one of his favorite sons, Gary Earl. And then when my grandfather passed away, sort of sat in a dusty box for a while until it was given to me. And this hat means a lot. The sacrifices that people have made, the hard work, the sweat. I don't know if you can see, but this thing is covered with dirt and grime. This was not a show hat. This was a hat that was used to work and sweat to produce. And that's really what this show is about. These episodes are going to take you through the journey that I have set for myself. I don't live out in the country. I don't ride horses and wild bulls anymore. But I have aspirations to become the best, strongest version of myself that I can be. And my passion is running, hence the name Ultra Cowboy. And I got into running from an early age. It's something that I've done my whole life. I've always enjoyed it. Whenever I did sports, running was the favorite part of the sport for me. It was everyone else's punishment, and I loved it. And would literally try and run laps around people. But I've always enjoyed running. And in just the last couple of years, I really seriously got back into running again. Training, did my first marathon a couple years ago in Cincinnati, did the Flying Pig Marathon. I've done a handful of marathons since then. And got inspired to really reach for new heights. I remember when I finished my first marathon, I thought, it wasn't easy, but there wasn't really a doubt in my mind that I could finish that race, even if I hadn't trained as much as I did, and I didn't train the most that I could have. But there wasn't a doubt that I couldn't finish that race. And I thought, is this it? But one of my coworkers had sent me a video. It's an REI mini documentary about running the Run Rabbit Run 100-mile race. And when I saw that, it just absolutely blew my mind. I had no idea that men and women would pay to go and do something as insane as that, run thousands of feet up and down the mountains in Colorado, and willingly do so for up to 36 hours. And when I saw that, I thought, you know what? That's where I need to head. And there is another race in Colorado. It's called the Ouray 100, and this race is absolutely insane. I'd say it's probably got to be one of the hardest, if not hardest, ultramarathons that's out there. And it's out in kind of central western Colorado and has over 40,000 feet of elevation gain over the course of the race. And there's a documentary they did on that back in 2016. And that year, I think less than 10% of the people that signed up finished. There were, I think, 5 finishers that year. And I mean, the guy that won was, an elite endurance athlete. So one of the 5, that's what he does. And even, at that level, I mean, you get some of these flat ultras, people will finish them in 12, 14 hours in a 100-mile race. I think the course record's over 30 hours. So, I mean, that tells you something right there. And I mean, it is just a brutal suffer fest. But there's a quote from that that I really love that they use to explain why they developed that race and made it as hard as they did. And it's around the philosophy that it's not about just getting a finisher's award or a participation prize that you can, throw in some box and let collect dust. It's about pushing yourself to the limits of what you are capable of doing. And that race really tries to embody that. I mean, running 100 miles is something in and of itself, whether it's flat, downhill, what have you, but that takes it to a whole new level. But the quote is, not the prize, but the struggle. Like the struggle is what has meaning, about hitting those lowest lows and sucking it up, cowboying up, and finishing the race. That is what, to me, ultras are all about. That's why you do it. I don't know that there's a lot of money to be had. It's not for the glamour. It's not an Olympic event. It's not something that you see, on the TVs praising, these ultra endurance athletes. Like, this is something that you do because you want to push yourself to the limits of what you are capable of. And that's what this channel is about how you can go out and do these incredible things that you may not think you're capable of right now and you may not be capable of. But with training and hard work and effort, you can push yourself to the limits of what you are capable of. And I'm what I would consider maybe a mid to back of the pack runner. I've run a handful of hundreds, 50 milers, 50Ks. I've never really placed in any significant race of this length, but I've finished almost all of them. And it's honestly the one that I didn't finish. I ran Bryce Canyon Ultra this year, and I ended up choosing to drop at mile 45. I got hot and dehydrated, and I can make up all the excuses in the world. But I quit. I gave up. And you know what? it felt like crap. Even thinking about it just really pisses me off. If I had have waited longer, I think I could have finished that and I could have sucked it up. I could have cowboyed up and I could have shown that I was capable of doing something hard. But I didn't. I called it quits. And that has bothered me to no end. Ever since the end of June, when that happened, I dropped out of that race. I have pushed myself to try and be stronger, faster, be willing to suffer more than I did before, because that's what I want to do. And that's why I do ultras, because there is a chance in a 100-mile race that you may not be able to finish for whatever reason. When you're running for 20, 30, 40 hours, so many things can go wrong and so much can happen. But that's what I want. I was sick of going through life coasting, just kind of getting by. I wanted to find something that would push me to be the best that I can be. And whatever that is for you, whether it's running, cycling, swimming, maybe it's just surviving with your family, whatever you decide to do that is challenging, that pushes you, but will be worth it. Again, not the prize, not the ribbon, not the belt buckle, but knowing that you struggled and you came out on the other side, that when life got hard, you cowboyed up. That's what I want to try and give you a passion for and to help you do. So as we go throughout this journey, there will be lots of tips that I've got, things that I've learned from my races. Again, I'm not an expert by any means, but I have learned things from my races, from my time running. And I'll share the things that I've learned, nutrition, gear, all of that. I'll share everything that I'm doing so that I can try and help you have the tools that you need to complete what you want to overcome. And that when the day comes that you're about to get a butt whooping, you can put on your whatever cowboy, cowgirl hat that you've got, whether it's real or something mentally, and you can cowboy up and get out there and suffer through it and come out the other side a better version of you. So sit back, hold on tight, and cowboy up.
The final climb. You got it, dude.
There he goes, across the finish.